Hey everyone, and welcome back to Timeless. We got a 7-0 in the metagame challenge with Mardu energy, so I want to go over it. We're doing commentary in post here because when I was recording this one, I didn't do commentary. I just recorded the gameplay while I played and focused. I recorded a couple more before this. None of them quite got to 7-0, so I decided to just shut up and focus up, and then we can go ahead and play the video and talk about it after if we do well. So I decided to speed up the first few games because it will take absolutely forever to get through the whole thing. It's like well over 2 hours the VOD because I took my time and focused. So if you want to watch every little nuance of the gameplay, what you could do is you could put YouTube on 1/4 speed and mute the audio. Because I sped this up exactly 4x. The first 5 games are all going to be sped up 4x. We played against Mono Belcher in the first game, then we played 4 meta decks in a row, and then the last few decks were all super interesting, and that's why I want to do the last 2 games at normal speed here. So we started up with Mono Blue Belcher. I missed a lot of the decisions in this game because I was given my intro, but pretty much here we just try to goldfish them, but unfortunately they have Belcher just a little bit too early for us to interact with. So onto sideboard plans. We sideboard pretty similarly to like normal show and tell. Go ahead and bring in the hand hate, the peddlers, bring in the pithing needles. I end up not bringing in the baubles, and I think I changed my mind game 3 and decided to bring in the baubles game 3. This is like a deck I've seen people talk about, but like I never played it on ladder, so I have absolutely no experience. Here, I decide to be, as early as possible with the thought seizes. Just get the hand hate in early, get it in aggressively. I was able to get my opponent stuck on a one lander, and I bait them into tapping out for that Bowmaster's there, and they just scoop it up. Kind of a non-game because I was able to use my discard to force mulligan them down to one land. And then game 3, we see a bunch of sideboard hate in our hand. Yeah, like I said, I changed my mind on having bobble, so we go ahead and jam a 1-drop, jam another 1-drop, and then start jamming some sideboard cards. I decided to go Needle before bobble here just because Amped Raptor. If you put bobble down, you can't hit the free spell off of Raptor. And this game is pretty straightforward. They do counter a lot of my stuff, but when you're on mono blue, you really can't remove things that are already on the board, so my stupid little 1-drops just snowball on them. And then here I have an extra mana, so I had the choice, do I jam Ragavan, do I jam Bauble? And my idea is if they do Show and Tell into Omniscience, we just put in the Bauble then, which is exactly what happens. And my opponent, they do have a way to get a One Ring down and stifle the Bauble trigger, which was amazing. So I was really sweaty here. I thought we were going to lose this in the first game, but thankfully my opponent is not able to get far enough. They are able to put down a Magus of the Moon, but we have enough damage to just get around it. Until they flash out 2 subtleties. Oh, I forgot about this plot twist. If my opponent plot twists me, I get stern scolded, but I have enough cards to just go ahead and lock them out of casting free spells, and they die to their ring damage on their upkeep. Ooh, that was a close one for game 1. Interesting, somewhat off meta deck that maybe I should play at some point. People keep asking me about it. So up next, we get a bunch of meta decks in a row. We play Dimir Frog twice, we play the Mirror Match, and we play Shift and Tell. This one, I believe, is a Dimir Frog one. I keep a nice hand that's got a Ragavan and some Bowmasters. I always love keeping Ragavan on the play. My opponent does interact with me, but I get some Ragavan hits through. Right there, I decided not to cast the Brainstorm. I'm pretty sure I should have in hindsight, now that I'm watching this footage back. And then here, this is a really funny one with the frog. I'm going to flip my Ajani. I'm going to target the frog with it. My opponent's going to discard. I'm going to keep pinging the frog. Yeah, watch this in 1/4 speed, by the way. I keep pinging the frog to bait them into discarding more cards. They don't know I have discharge in hand to finish it off, so they just discarded their whole hand except 1 card. I think that was 4 cards discarded. Yeah, I just sacked my Amped Raptor for it, but I'm totally fine trading cards on the board state for cards in their hand right now because we have an Ajani. We're so far ahead. They just have 1 creature that I'm going to kill with my Ajani. They cruise to try and get back into it, which cruise is a fantastic draw. That's why blue-black tempo is so good. But we draw one of the best possible cards in our deck, which is a creature that lets us go wide, so now we can start cleaning up the board. If we didn't draw that Bowmaster, it might have gotten a little tricky, to be honest. But then this game's pretty trivial. It's just like turn shit sideways, win. Put Laris into our hand. Yeah, and our opponent scoops it up. All right, standard sideboarding against Dimir. We bring in a little extra removal. And when we're on the draw, we put in Peddlers over Ragavants. I've really been liking Peddlers in this matchup lately. I can't remember exactly what I wrote in my sideboard, actually. Wait, I have my sideboard guide open. Because I was looking at it. Yeah, I don't have put in Juggernaut Peddlers in my sideboard guide, but I think on the draw you should totally be putting in Juggernaut Peddlers. Something I've gone back and forth on myself. I'm not 100% sure. So we keep a solid hand here that it doesn't have a one drop, but it's got a instant speed threat. It's got some 2-for-1s. It's got, of course, a Johnny Bombardment, which is very, very strong. Here we just jam Amp Raptor because any card we hit is good. Hitting a removal spell is great. We hit a sideboard card, which is so good. So for this whole game, Hearse is just an MVP. If you're ever questioning how strong Hearse is, I really want to put more copies of Hearse in my Mardu sideboard, but there's just no room for it if I want to have enough hate for the unfair decks. Back when I first made the deck, I think I had 2 or 3 copies of it. It's just so strong. It's crazy strong against the Dimir Tempo deck. It was insanely strong against other energy variants when everyone was running Flage. We don't run against Flage energy in this uh, run, but we do run against a Flage deck. So a little spoiler alert for the final round. We hit the final boss on Flage. Right. And then here we get a bombardment down, so we're able to control the board. Even though our opponent has so many removal spells, we're able to just use the Goblin Bombardment to carefully control the board. Make sure we never fall too far behind. My opponent does have counter spells and such, but eventually we are able to play through it. I'm thinking here, how much do I commit to the board? Do I play a Johnny here? I decide against it because my opponent clearly had mana drain mana. I decided to just chill for a little bit. Chill, take some damage, control their graveyard. I think with an Unlicensed Hearse and a Bombardment down, we're in a pretty commanding position. So they're going to play their own lures here, and then I have a couple ways to kill it. Static Person's the first one, so I'm expecting them to counter this so that I can then play a Johnny, flip it, and then just do the Ajani thing once it's flipped. Yeah, this nonsense here. Flip my Ajani. I ping the Netherglyph there because I know I can kill it with Unlicensed Hearse if I just get a couple pings on it. I specifically go to my end step so I could sacrifice those little baby cats instead of the bigger cats. I also have City's Blessing here, so the game's a foregone conclusion at this point. Goblin Bombardment and Unlicensed Hearse absolutely carried this matchup. My opponent even draws Deluge, but it doesn't matter. I just sack my whole board. At the board. Play Luris, it gets countered. It doesn't really matter because I just crew my Hearse. Wowza. Alright, yeah, that was a pretty good showing against Chest Hair deck. I opened the pack because I'm impatient. And then we get matched against someone from Discord. This is going to be a Mardu Mirror match. And you can go ahead and slow this down if you want to see like the Mardu Mirror play patterns, because I think I played pretty well. There was one really janky decision point where I missed some timing. It's around when I swords to my own creature. I gave them an energy when I wasn't supposed to, but other than that, I think I played pretty clean because I didn't have to focus on yapping. So it's standard Mardu stuff. We're just going back and forth, peddling each other some Juggernauts. We're just jockeying for board position. Here I offer a trade. I make sure my Bowmaster dies first, just so that I don't get blown up by a removal spell. Oftentimes, you want to play the second Bowmaster as early as possible to get the extra damage onto your opponent, but I actually let damage go through first there, just so that I don't lose to my opponent having a removal spell to take out my first Bowmaster and make me kind of waste my ping. Yeah, I got my Juggers peddled this game. I think we win the game with both of those Juggernauts in our hand. We just keep drawing like relevant stuff that's not Juggernauts. I think I went to Yap on Discord, or one of us went to go Yap on Discord while we were waiting. Yeah, I have like the opportunity to play Juggernaut for like 4 turns in a row, and I just keep saying no. I think both of us draw decently. Like, yeah, look at that. They draw that. I offer a trade 2-for-1 there. I take out Guide of Souls because they had 5 energy, and I'm like, okay, well, I don't have Juggernaut mana, so let me just put Luris in my hand. And then once again, we have Juggernaut mana, but we don't play it. We just play Luris, play Monkey, say, all right, you got to answer my Monkey. I decline to pay here because I want to put Luris under that. And then I think I finally pay my Juggernaut here. Oh no, just kidding. I don't play my Juggernaut here. I just play Cat. Good old Juggernaut. Oh, and then we draw Bombardment. So Bombardment's just a free win. We have 6 creatures on board. I go to combat anyway because why not? We're screwing around. And I could just sacrifice everything that was blocked, and that's enough damage to go through. I could have sacrificed everything before combat too. Didn't really matter there. Right, and then standard sideboarding. I take out the peddlers. I put in extra removal spells. All right, here it's a good opening hand. We got a bunch of creatures that are essentially two for ones and removal spells. I mean, that's the whole deck, right? This whole deck is a pile of two for ones and efficient one drops, both one drop removal and one drop creepers. I start with the Amp Raptor because it's like the strongest possible two for one, and I say, all right, I want a high roll hit or removal spell on a Johnny. If not, I get big board presence, and then next turn I get Swords of Johnny and play my own Johnny. We do high roll here, which is awesome. We hit another removal spell on top, so here I'm just flashing out Bowmasters. This game was super close because I was behind on tempo all game, but I was able to claw it back. So you want to watch the micro sequencing, watch it this game. There is one like really interesting point here though. I wonder if it's gonna come up soon. I think it's soon that I decide to swords my own cat. Because I noticed my opponent here, they really tank about it, and they decide to pay their 3 energy for the static prison. Or 3 energy to fly. They have 0 for static prison, which is really interesting. So I want to keep them off of getting more energy for as long as possible. So up here, they're gonna like flash in a creature. So I do make a minor sequencing mistake here. I should have swords, or not swords, shot the Guide of Souls before they got the 1 energy trigger off of their Orcish Bowmaster. I made a mistake. I gave them 1 energy. If they didn't have that 1 energy, the prison would have popped. I would have gotten my Johnny back. I could have flipped it with Galvanic Discharge, and the game would have been pretty over right there. But here we're able to play our Luris, play a Bowmasters, and man, we just cling to life here. We're at 3 HP. I think we have a really good draw where we draw Bombardment, if I'm remembering correctly. Yeah, we draw Bombardment here. And like I said before, Bombardment just lets you control the board. So we kill a Johnny before any funny business can happen. We play Bombardment. We sack the token just so that we get a new token with our other Bowmasters. Go to combat with Luris. I want to gain 3 life here. Play our other Bowmasters after combat. Yeah, just good. Bombardment completely controls the board. Best possible draw on the deck. Either Bombardment or Nightmare would have been amazing there. Um, so here I make a decision not to sack my Luris because I'm like, oh, they're going to run out of energy. And then I immediately rip Nightmare, which is the card that would have been able to rebuy Luris, but it's fine. We just do some Bowmaster looping here. Good old 4x speed Bowmaster looping coming through. And my opponent, they're able to play Luris. They auto tapper fucked them over there, by the way. They should have been able to play a 1-drop, but auto tapper decided to leave up Rakdos instead of leaving up a white source, even though all 3 out of their 4 lands make white. So you can see me. Look at how many times I cast Nightmare. I don't get a huge amount of value each time. It's just like 1 Bowmaster ping, but it adds up. And then the static prisons pop. I get my stuff back. Yeah, that game absolutely shows the value and the power of the enchantments in that deck in the Fairmares. Like the person who controls the bombardment absolutely controls the tempo of the game. If you're ahead just a tiny bit and you draw bombardment, the game's over. Even if the board's at parity and you draw bombardment, you still pull ahead by just such a ridiculous degree. All right, here I see some weird ass lands. Not sure what to think. I realized pretty quickly it's Shift and Tell, so my turn 1 Ragavan's gonna be able to attack a lot. I jam the Raptor because I know my removal spells are gonna be useless no matter what. So if I hit one, oh well, which is what I end up doing. I just wanted to make a board presence as quick as possible. And here my opponent, unfortunately, they just like have it on turn 3. That's the beats of Show and Tell sometimes, and one of the weaknesses of Energy as a deck. So we try our best to hope that they eventually brick because we have outs. We could draw Static Prison to get rid of that Omniscience, and my opponent like they're not casting anything, right? They're not casting anything. This game gets closer than I would think. They do bounce my thing here with Ugin's Binding. I mean, it's kind of a foregone conclusion when they have Omniscience out, but I decided to play it out anyway because it's the metagame challenge. I've won some games already. I think we're 3-0 at this point, so I don't want to give up too early. Yeah, look at that. We were able to make a big ass board presence, get a bunch of Bowmasters down. They bounce all my stuff. I had a point where I used my treasures before all my stuff got bounced. I think I should not have, and I should have flashed into Bowmasters after. I think I still lose regardless. But it was close, all things considered. For them slamming Omniscience, it took them a while to like find an Attracts that wins. Standard Shift until sideboarding. I actually don't bring in the needles here. I think I didn't want to overboard. I brought in Thought Seizes instead of Needles. I usually would bring in the Needles against Shift, and in game 3 I ended up bringing in both, and I said, screw it, there's no such thing as overboarding when you're playing one of your worst matchups. So we get to peddle their Juggers here, and we take Show and Tell right out of their hand. And this game, we get some really interesting surgical decisions because they put an Omniscience in the bin right away. I could surgical that on the spot, and look at that. I almost cast it, and I almost draw step surgical them. And I said, I can wait. Obviously, I could wait for them to either cast Show and Tell or copy it in order to exile that. And I drew a hearse anyway, so I feel super safe. And then I realize in this position, the card that we lose to is not Omniscience, but Show and Tell. Show attracts, it actually kills us because I sideboarded out a lot of my removal spells. So I'm most afraid of that. I'm also kind of afraid of a wonder. So what I really want a surgical is show and tell, not omniscience. So we get really lucky and they bin show and tell with cash grab, and I am able to take it out of their deck. So I don't think they really have a way to beat us at this point. We're just turning future sideways. I play an Amtraptor. We also get to play a Bauble, which pretty much guarantees victory. Actually, we didn't even play it. We just keep it in our hand. Oh, right, we kept it in our hand because my opponent had force and I didn't want to lose both of my artifacts at once. My opponent has a One Ring here to stall, but then I just play Bauble. They're like, we're all looking at each other here. And my opponent can't possibly beat this board state. Yeah, they can loop rings all day, but they're at 2 HP. They're not going to be able to beat the board state no matter what they draw. They just don't have enough mana to clean up my board and then win on the same turn. So here I decide whether or not I'm overboarding by also bringing in the Pithing Needles alongside the Thought Seizes, and I think I decide no, I'm not. You could never be too safe. So I bring in literally everything. I could think I cut all of my ragged ends when I'm on the draw. This is a interesting hand that I keep. I keep a one lander, and the idea here is that even if I don't draw another land, we just play Ocelot Pride early, and that thing gets me incremental value while I cast Thought Seizes and other sideboard cards. We get very lucky by drawing the colored land that we need so that we can double spell here. And I'm deciding, hey, do we want Guide into Pride or do we want to Thought Seize them? And I say, we got to play around the worst possible scenario. So I want to Thought Seize them. Their hand is full of junk, thankfully. Absolute junk in their hand. So this game does go pretty well. I don't think they draw too well. I think maybe they draw a ring late and they kind of pull themselves back into it. It's just stupid whiteboard. Look at this. Look at this. This is a turn 3, by the way, and I Thought Seized them. Good old energy, right? So my opponent's just gonna stare at my board state, stare at their deck. They could theoretically stall with some One Rings, but it's not gonna happen. Not today, at least. All right, I think that's 4-0 for us so far. So we queue up, and if I'm not mistaken, I think I take a little bit of a break here. I forgot to edit out this bit of the video. That's okay. I do take a break. It's important if you're gonna play 7 games in a row. You gotta take breaks. I can't talk for this long in a row as well, and also keep up the focus. So yeah, I got a bunch of 3-1s and 4-1s that I was recording. I couldn't string together 7. That's why I decided to play without yapping the whole time. I'll post some of those, tomorrow probably after this one, just because they're also interesting. I'm sure you guys are interested, even though it's not a 7-0. All right, now we get the game against Dimir. Interesting, we play against not Chest Hair, but just Ches. He stole half the name. We got budget Chest Hair coming here from Walmart playing Dimir Tempo. No insults to the opponent, of course. I just find it funny. He's almost exactly the same name as the frog guy. So I decided to play sorcery speed here to play around any of their counter spells, and I say, okay, if you bowmaster me back at sorcery speed, I'm just going to bowmaster you again at sorcery speed. I play Amtraptor, we high roll and hit into Johnny. We're so far ahead on board. I keep a removal spell on top. So next turn we can removal spell, put Luris on top. They take out my Johnny, but look how fucking wide my board is. We don't lose this. It's just a good old energy on the play moment in this game, unfortunately for my opponent. Even though they do have a lot of answers, they do have a lot of ways to stall. They brainstorm here, they put blockers, but I'm like, oh, okay, I'm like, play Luris, play a Johnny, what you got? They got none. Nothing that can compete at least. And then it's standard chest hair tempo sideboarding. Yeah, I do bring in all my peddlers here when we're on the draw. I thought about it, and I concluded peddlers over Ragavans on the draw. I think I ended up cutting some of them because I wanted to make room for all my graveyard hate as well. But yeah, all the Ragavans out on the draw. And then we draw Guide of Souls, which is a nice 1-drop. I do decide to Swords Tameo because I noticed my opponent did Bauble in my upkeep, and usually players do that when they want to try to flip Tameo on their turn too. Because they draw a card naturally, draw a card for the Bauble, and then they just have to draw one more card to flip the Tameo. And you could do that with the treasure that she makes. Here I decide to just trade a creature on board for a card in their hand, also preventing them from drawing, so I think that's a fine trade. Now we get Guide Pride going, and this is really key here that we get Guide Pride going, and they both resolved. I got scared for a second there, is because I need the extra energy to be able to actually shoot this Psychic Frog, because they had two more cards in hand to discard. My opponent does flip the Tameo. Oh my god, I thought the game was maybe over. But we get really lucky here, and we do rip a Galvanic Discharge off the top. I do play Peddler anyway. That gets countered. So now we can go ahead and play this charge. I realize I can just get away with paying 2 and then use the other 2 energy to get 2 extra damage from my Ocelot Pride, get my life gain trigger. And yeah, we're just firmly in the driver's seat at that point for that matchup. And that takes us to 5-0, if I'm not mistaken. So we're going to play the last 2 games at real time. I'll go ahead and give my honest commentary on them. So up first, the reason I'm doing these at real speed with detailed commentaries because the decks are both super interesting. They're decks that we've all seen before, but they're not the top meta decks, right? If you say, okay, what are you most likely to play in the late rounds? It's going to be the decks we just played. Mardu Energy, Show and Tell variants, Frog. But we did not get any of those. We saw Allura's Companion, and I saw Blue Mana at the start of the game against this opponent, but it did not actually end up being a Frog deck. And you'll notice these queue times get quite long towards the end. But I had some yapping to do while we were in queue. The last queue was like 5 minutes. I completely edited that out. All right, so we get up against Perseus. I recognize that name. I had played them yesterday in the metagame challenge, but I didn't remember what. But after I saw like Luris in their first land, I'm like, oh, it's the Tainted Pact guy. So this guy has Sultai Tainted Pact, which is not the usual colors for it. Usually it's Grixis or just blue-black, but either way, usually a Luris deck and playing, a random hodgepodge of cards in the colors, plus Thassa's Oracle and Tainted Pact as 2 ofs in the deck. I didn't know this at the time when I was mulliganing. I thought I was just playing against normal blue-black tempo, just normal chest hair deck. But this is a good hand to keep. We got our Guide of Souls into Juggernaut Peddler, so we have an aggressive beats with Disruption here. And, it's good against both decks, so no harm in keeping this hand at all. Yeah, my opponent leads Breeding Pool, and it really confuses me. I'm like, what the hell? Are you on Breeding Pool in your chest hair deck? I thought it might have just been like the blue-black deck splashing green for a second. And then I think they misclick here. Like, you'll see in a second when we get to their end step, but I think my opponent just like misclicks fetching because they fail to find. It was either that or they got very unlucky and they drew all of their green fetchables to hand because they also play a Overgrown Tomb from hand next turn. So I think they just happened to draw their green fetchables and they didn't realize. We could take a look at that hand here. And then once I get a chance to do that, they Veil of Summer me, and then I realize, oh yeah, it's the Tainted Pact guy from before. He got lucky. He had the Veil of Summer right away, so I don't get to take a look at his hand here. And yeah, this is what I mean when I say he failed to find for some strange reason. I guess he had all of his other green lands in his hand. I mean, there's only 2 green fetchables other than Surveils. There's only 2 shocks, and he probably has 1 green Surveil here. And I can't quite remember exactly how game 1 goes, so I guess I'm half reacting live. I played a lot of games today. It was actually just the 7. I woke up today and I'm like, okay, it's day 2 of the metagame challenge. We didn't do anything day 1. I gotta shut up and just record without yapping the whole time for once in my life. And yeah, there's that Overgrown Tomb I was talking about. I make a interesting decision to play Nightmare before combat to get the extra energy, and I was just gonna spend it on flying. And then I even briefly consider should I discharge my own creature to get those extra counters. And I decide against it because they could definitely still be playing creatures in the Luris deck. If they play a Tameo or something, we're definitely going to want to be shooting it. Yeah, my opponent's still playing just, the hodgepodge of cards that you would expect here. There's a bauble mixed in there. And then here, I'm hoping to draw more threats. If we keep like drawing more answers, it's unfortunately not going to work out. There aren't too many targets for removal in this deck, so I really don't want to see a second removal spell show up. And over here, we're just going to fetch, grab a Surveil land while we have the opportunity. See Bowmasters, it's fantastic against a deck that's playing counter spells and playing blue. They do get to see our Bowmasters here. Actually, no, they didn't. That bubble trigger was looking at the card from before we shuffled, but I do play these Bowmasters at sorcery speed because I want to get 2 more energy so that I could use those with Guide of Souls to get 2 more damage. My opponent does let it resolve after a bit of a pause. So we get the extra ping on them. I for a second think, hey, wait, should I play around the Veil of Summer? And then realize it's a Luris deck, or not a Luris deck, a Tainted Pact deck. They won't have a second, but look who they have. Snappy to bring back the Veil of Summer. Oh my god. They're really just playing him as a blocker and also, preventing me from pinging them for 1. But, I had this removal spell that I wanted an excuse to use, right? So I get my energy either way. I draw a card here, but I do get like an extra ping. The ping can't hit them, but I still get to make my little token. I get 5 energy now, so we can go ahead and fly in our Peddler. Peddler's a great target for the counters, by the way. Flying Vigilance is really sweet. Not that it matters too much against this deck. This deck's only creatures are probably like Snapcaster, Tameo, Frog. Nothing too crazy. But against actual other creatures deck, it's quite the beating. And my opponent scoops it up here because they didn't have enough to answer my board. My board's getting pretty wide. I had enough energy almost to fly something else next turn. And then we sideboard the standard way that we do for combo decks. We take out all of our removal, even the static presence, because I don't really think that they have too many targets for it. I end up bringing some of it back in just because I'm looking at my list. I'm like, I have a lot of slots. I don't have dedicated hate for this strategy. So I think I bring in the hearse and some of my removal spells. I think, maybe I try to like justify, oh, can we run surgical? You absolutely can. Even though they have 2 copies of Tainted Pact, you should not try to surgical that. I just end up bringing in 3 of the discharges just to fill slots. I'm not super happy that they're filling slots. I also choose Prismatic Ending as one of my removal spells because I think that there's a really good chance that they bring in like some sort of funny permanent that might be a little hard to interact with, something like a Chalice. They have a lot of ones, so maybe not exactly Chalice, but they could bring in just any sort of like 1 or 2 mana artifact enchantment that might hate on my deck passively. They're a singleton deck, so sometimes the sideboard cards do get a little wacky, so I brought that in as a catch-all. Maybe I should have kept the prisons in over the discharges just for cards like that, now that I watched the video back in hindsight. Good news here is that we have what I consider a fantastic hand. We have a great Snowbally 1-drop, 2 of them in fact, and we also have the Juggernaut Peddler to interact with their hand. So I feel really, really confident here. Actually, let me check my notes. Do I go 2-0 or 2-1 here? I go 2-0. Okay, so we do end up winning this game. This is the crazy close game. This is why I wanted to play this at normal speed. You guys got to see how this game ends. I promise this is worth the wait. I decided to peddle their Juggers ASAP. I could have waited a turn because they really need 4 mana to do their combo. But I really did not want to chance things. So I see Thoracle and a tutor, and I said to take the tutor, and in hindsight, I don't know if that's correct. It does work out for us, but they're an A plus B combo involving Thoracle and Tainted Pact. They have 2 copies of each of those cards in the deck, so my thinking was if I just take Thoracle, then they can just tutor for the other one with their tutor. Yeah, but the thing is, if they only have 2 copies of Thoracle, removing one of them permanently is pretty sweet. And there is a chance that they only have 1 copy, but I don't think so, because if you only had 1 copy, you would probably run Lutri instead of Luris as your companion. At least that's my thinking. But my opponent does have a cool hand where they have a flare here. And, it's interesting me playing around counter spells. Here, I have 2 mana available to me because there's a Surveil land here. I Surveil first to get a bit more information. I see a 2-for-1 on top, so I say, all right, let's just play some 1-drops. This is a good way to play around opponent's removal spells just by going as wide as possible. Now we have multiple Snowbally 1-drops in play, and even if they spend 2 removal spells to answer each of those, I still have like this 2/2 Vigilance that's just slowly chipping in damage. It's bad into mass removal, but I have a Johnny and Amp Raptor in my hand to rebuild really, really quickly. Like if they mass removed me there, I'll just say, okay, untap Amp Raptor, play a cat, your turn. So I really wasn't fearing that at this point in the game. I think here and for most of the rest of the game, my opponent does leave counterspell mana up, so I do have to play around it kind of awkwardly. They have that Flare of Denial, but they never actually get a blue creature into play for it. I'm sure they have like Baleful Strix and some other friends to sacrifice to it in the deck. We saw Snapcaster before. I don't think he showed up this game. My opponent does spend a bit of time tanking because it's interesting what they should do, whether or not they should hold up their counterspell. Always a choice. So we get in sideways, thwack them. And then here we just go wide. I'm expecting this to eat the counter spell. I'm like kind of trying to beat my opponent. Hey, look at that, double Ocelot Pride. You should counter that because they go crazy together. And then I'm convinced this Amp Raptor is going to eat the counter spell. Then it also resolves, which is wild. And then they end up countering my Cascade target here. They counter the Juggernaut Peddler, just keep their hands safe. Because at this point, I'm going to Peddle Thoracle. Oh no, they don't counter it. Right, they cast Dig Through Time, which is so strange. I was like, why are you not countering this and letting me take a look at your hand? I don't know. I guess they had it in their head that they really wanted to cast that dig to get ahead on card advantage and try to find their A+B. They spent all of their mana on it, so they can't even counterspell me. Yeah, I found this play really, really weird. I really think that they should have counterspelled either the Amp Raptor or the Juggernaut Peddler. I personally would have counterspelled Amp Raptor because it's a scary card. But if not, you gotta counter that Peddler before it actually looks at your hand. And look at that hand! Oracle, Tainted Pact, and Culling Ritual. So they hit their combo. I take the Tainted Pact here after much deliberation. They do get to cull my board. This is why I said this game's crazy. They cull my board. My Ocelot Prides, against my will, make a lot of tokens. Maybe too many tokens. All of those tokens are going to turn into mana. Oh my god, my opponent gets 9 mana. You know what you can cast with 9 mana? 2 Juggernauts. Dear god. These Juggernauts almost kill us. It is so close to us dying, it's insane. We always lose to our own Juggers. The Juggers are pretty good when you don't actually have to pay mana for them. But our saving grace here is that we drew a Johnny. We can chump block with a cat. And then we can Amp Raptor, hopefully hit a good card, and then have a Johnny take over the game. But my opponent's holding a counter spell, so it's never going to be that easy. Never going to be easy like that. I do decide to flip my Johnny anyway. I fear a stifle effect or removal onto a Johnny for a second. I'm pretty convinced I'm going to lose this game, by the way. Like, we're so on the back foot. I don't have answers to my own Juggernauts just because I sideboarded out all of my removal. But I draw 2 creatures here. I play the cat first because I really, really, really want them to use that flare. I really want them to use the flare. And I would think with Guide Pride together, you would want to flare it. But my opponent is super disciplined. They don't counter anything. It's wild. I get to resolve my red permanent. I get a Chthonian Nightmare, which lets me loop Juggernaut Peddlers. This is kind of BS. This is getting nuts. My opponent finally counters the Chthonian before it goes off. Because I would have just looped Juggernaut Peddlers and like taken their Thoracle out of their hand and then they can't win normally. And then I say here, alright, we gotta ignore the Juggernauts. We have enough HP. We can just go ahead and put all the damage up top. Then we have a bunch of stuff here. But is this not the game I almost died to Juggernaut? I remember being a lot lower. My own Juggers. Or was that against round 7? Well, we'll see if it was in round 7 or not. I remember being so much closer to death off the back of my own Juggernauts. Where do they whip my board here? I'm trying to remember. I've actually forgotten all of the details, even though I just played this like an hour ago. And my opponent casts Genesis, and then I think they scoop it up. I'm trying to remember how this game went. No, my video appears to still go, so they did not scoop it up. Not here, not yet. Play their own Luris? I remember a sequence where like my opponent played their own Luris, as did I. Yeah, they found a way out of this. I'm trying to remember what it is. My opponent actually had an out here. They go to 2 HP, shocking. And yeah, it was Path of Peril. That's what they drew. Path of Peril wiped my board. And this is where I almost died to my own Juggernauts. Opponent hits down my Johnny, attacks me. This is so wild. I'm almost dead. I put Luris in my hand. I have exactly 3 mana. I think I'm going to die to my Juggernauts. Yeah. Before, when I said I felt hopeless, this was the moment I felt hopeless. The board before wasn't that bad. This, I'm going to 4. So I have to draw a land here in order to impact the board. My opponent's also going to put their own Luris into their hand, which is a fun experience. And play it. Yikes. So here I draw Arid Mesa. I can go ahead, fetch a basic, go to 3, play my own Luris, and then I think I decide to bring back a monkey with it. I look at my graveyard, and I picked a monkey just because it is a 2-power 1-drop. My other 1-drops do not have 2 power, and thus they cannot profitably block the enemy Lurrus. And the idea is, okay, I'm going to trade Lurruses, or I'm going to trade Lurrus for Peddler, trade Ragavan for Lurrus. They will end up having 1 Juggernaut in play. When I said Peddler, I meant Juggernaut, of course. So they'll have 1 Juggernaut in play, and I will have 1 HP. That's the plan. Oh, what a plan, right? All right, and here we go. We got to do it. Hit. We got a 1. Base Sylvan Tutor. My god, they can even get whatever they want on top of their library, which is wacky. Usually I'm assuming they Sylvan Tutor for Thoracle, but they already have it in their hand. So they think about this for a while. I don't remember what they got. They got Snapcaster maybe? Something? Maybe they had no valid targets? I can't quite remember. I guess we'll react live. But here I'm pretty sure I'm going to lose this. Can't imagine winning from here. The winning draw would be like a Johnny. Oh, they did get Snapcaster. Okay. And they play Thoracle just to turn it sideways. But I draw a Johnny, like a Luxac. And I'm able to play a Johnny and Hearse together. Because, you know, I'm a lucky sack of shit. And sometimes you got to draw well. So we could play a Johnny, play Hearse, saturate our mana. The Hearse locks down that Snapcaster that they put on top. Yep, to the hunt. And that Hearse is a very important extra creature that can eventually turn sideways if we block for long enough. And it can also attack and block on its own. If opponent plays Snappy, I'm of course going to just exile whatever they target. And then here we're going to jump and flip our Johnny. If they try to call me again, I say no thank you, sir. I'm not trying to die to my own Juggernaut today. I hit Lurrus just in case they have like a funny Unearth effect in their deck. And then here we get to jump and we get to flip our Johnny. We do need to draw like another creature off the top. If we do, especially a red creature, then I think we're in business. If we don't, oof, we're not in business at all. We flip our Johnny here, hoping for a creature just to gum up the board. And we draw Bowmasters, which is fantastic. Removal spell for the Snapcaster Mage. And now we have 3 blockers. So we're not going to die. Not yet. And we have that Unlicensed Hearse is a sneaky, sneaky extra attacker. And also an extra blocker. So my opponent thinks here. I think I'm actually in a pretty okay position. Removal spells could possibly blow me out. And then my opponent does something weird by attacking with both creatures. I did not expect that. So I think about how to profitably block the Thoracle. I'm thinking maybe I could just chump block it, or maybe I should crew my Hearse. I'm really not sure if this is the correct decision, because if you crew Hearse here, it gets opened up to creature removal. And this card is pretty important. I think about it a lot, and then I end up saying, okay, I'm opened up to creature removal. Turns out they have nothing. Priority just passes. And then we're able to exile 2 more things. Grow our Hearse. We have a 4-power Hearse and the ability to attack with it here next turn, which is awesome. And then my opponent scoops it up, so they realize that. Wow. Oh my god, what a game, right? That was a wild one. And of course I got asked if I had fun in that match, and the answer is yes. I loved that match. That was wild. I was biting my nails at the end. Oh, what a crazy matchup. And if you wouldn't believe it, Game 7 gets even crazier, and we get another somewhat off-meta deck for a treat. It's one that we've seen before. It's one that I've even played before on the channel, and I've said I like this deck. It's just kind of clunky in the meta right now. However, one of its good matchups is Energy. It's good against creature decks, so we get against Obosh. And from what I can tell, this is really similar to the Obosh list I've played in the past, where you're playing Fury, Solitude, Seasoned Pyromancer, Ephemerate them, Blood Moon, all that stuff. So I see the Obosh, I'm like, oh shit, this is a bad matchup for me. It's going to end at 6-1. Because their deck is really teched to beat Energy. At least the main 60 is, because they get both Fury and Solitude, and all their sideboard cards are for other decks. So here I'm like, okay, I gotta turn my creatures sideways, and I need to try to impact the board as well as possible. I decide to hold up removal here instead of playing a 2-drop, because I know that they can play like their own decent creatures like Guide, Pride, Ragavan, and I do want to be able to interrupt that if that's the case. And when you look at that, it's a monkey. And a removal spell. I think I say to myself, since it's just a monkey, no dash, no other creatures to give it evasion, I'm just going to go to my next turn and I'm going to try to Amp Tractor and get a 2-for-1 here. I see land on top, so that makes me very confident in this Amp Tractor play, because if I don't hit removal here, then I just end up shooting it with Galvanic Discharge, and I say, wait a minute, my opponent is tapped out. I'm not getting any priority pauses from them for them having a Solitude, so let's just go ahead and flip our Johnny. Let's flip them right now, because I'm shooting my own creature with the removal spell. It's as if I used that removal spell on Ragavan pretty much, but I've also turned Ajani into a very scary planeswalker here. Now, of course, there are Lightning Bolt and Flage decks, so Ajani can just die here. But it's as if they Lightning Bolted or Flaged the Ajani normally. I still got my removal spell out of it. I got my other cat back. It's fine. And yeah, they do end up flaging it. Flage, very strong card against my deck. Very strong card in general. It's just that people don't play it because it's not as strong against the unfair decks. It's a bit slow. And now we have all of our crazy enchantments in play, so I can Nightmare, get back into Johnny. I feel super comfy because I have Static Prison for the Flage. Super comfy here. Go ahead and sack the Raptor just so that everything on the board is a cat, so my board is essentially removal proof until Johnny gets removed first. And then I think my opponent plays Spyro here, and then I have a decision after that that I don't necessarily agree with in hindsight. We can talk about that when it happens. Yep, they play Spyro here. Just draw, discard. They fill their graveyard for Flage, very importantly here. And I say to myself, I'm just going to attack with my cats because my opponent probably won't block, and if they do, I get to flip my Johnny. And I think this was totally a mistake. I think I should have just flipped him with Bombardment, or maybe not flipped him. You'll see what I mean in a sec. So they go ahead and block here, right? Because this is, I think, good blocks for my opponent in hindsight, because what they end up with is an empty board where my Ajani is not doing that much damage. I do have Chthonian Nightmare to do some silly loops, but I'm not like able to meaningfully rebuild really. And then there's another little detail that I forgot about. I wonder if you guys noticed. Look at my opponent's lands. I plus my Ajani out of bolt range because I know that they have the potential to have more bolts and flages in their deck, and I just play my enchantments. I'm like, okay, I'm going to rebuild next turn. However, I forgot. Flage can have haste. Uh-oh. Yeah, I saw that double red mana get added, and I knew I was screwed. So my opponent can either put me to 2 HP or kill a Johnny. What's good for me, at least, is that I have the answer for Flage. However, my opponent decides to put all the damage up top, meaning if they have a Lightning Bolt, I die. Rough stuff. And their deck plays 4 Flage, 4 Bolt. So, very likely that they actually have it. So I somehow have to do 23 damage before they actually, I got to do 23 damage before the draw bolt. And that's not a great situation to put yourself in. And my opponent's going to surveil here, looking for those bolts, looking for those flages. And then I do have, like, Nightmare here to, like, get a bunch of value with. I think I get my other cat, my better cat back from the graveyard, and I sacrifice the other Ajani just so that I can slowly widen my board. And we are able to like put the beating on. Like we're putting pressure on. I have a cool trick where I can essentially just bring back an Ajani, kill it, and get multiple Ajani activations in the same turn, right? I activate my Ajani on board, and then I Chthonian Nightmare back the other Ajani and flip it. And then I just keep doing that. I keep getting more Ajani flips. And I want to watch this video back because this is my first time watching it back. I'm curious if I had a lethal that I missed at any point, because between Nightmare and Bombardment, I can actually like flip a Johnny a bunch of times. Get hit by swords here. I don't sack it, and I actually really should have. But I was valuing the life. I was valuing the life, and yeah, the life ended up not mattering because it didn't take me from 3 to 4. It only took me from 2 to 3. So here we're going to bring back a Johnny to make my board wide. And I'm curious if I had a lethal here. I think the answer is no. Because I zero a Johnny here, right? This is 4 damage. And then I end up nightmaring to flip my Johnny again. I think maybe if I bombarded to flip a Johnny here, I would have had a little bit more damage. Yeah, so I do nightmare to flip this Ajani. This is wrong. So I think I would have had 4 more damage if I did bombardment to flip Ajani, right? Do a bombardment to flip Ajani, one goes to the graveyard because of the legend rule, and then I flip it again? Yeah, that would have actually been it. Isn't that wild? Yeah, I did miss lethal. Okay, I wanted to watch this back. I missed lethal, so what I needed to do, instead of flipping my Ajani with Nightmare, I need to flip it with Bombardment. And then I would have been able to get that a little bit more damage. You see, they're at 6. I could knock them all the way down to 2. And I get killed by a hasty Timeless Dragon. Like, look at this shit. Yeah, shout out to Chad from the base department for playing Boros Obosh in the finals. I think it bolts anyway. Not that it really mattered. So I'm pretty sure I had lethal there. Maybe could do the math again after when I'm not giving commentary, but I'm pretty sure I would not have lost out on creatures there. Like I would have lost an extra creature ping to bombardment, but I would have gotten an extra Johnny activation that I think I could have used to take them to 0. So I debate for a while on what to sideboard in. I need Unlicensed Hearse for Flage, and I need Flage removal, and then I eventually settle on all 4 Peddlers, because taking both Flage and Fury out of their hand is really, really important. And unbeknownst to me now, Blood Moon also ends up becoming very, very important. Another card that I really wish I can rip out of their hand. So, game 2. We have a turn 1 Ragavan on the play, which is great. His hand is not phenomenal. If Ragavan doesn't get blocked, it's of course phenomenal. Double Bombardment is essentially a mull to 6, because the card doesn't do anything in multiples. So I view this as a 6-card hand. Would I keep Ragavan on the play? Or sorry, on the... No, we are on the play. Yeah, you're right. On the play. Would I keep Ragavan on the play with Double Masters? I think I would. Yeah. We pass back to them. I'm able to grab a basic here. I grab a basic, I flash this in, and I have the opportunity to fetch another basic here with this Bloodstained Mire, but Blood Moon was not on my mind. Oh, I end up playing Parlor. That's why I didn't get the basic here. I see a Johnny on top. I say, oh my god, a Johnny Bombardment. Let's fucking go, right? My opponent gets their own basic. They don't interact with me right away. And then I have a decision point. Do I want to flash out the Bowmasters or just play Bombardment? I decided to just play Bombardment first. And I don't know if this is correct. I think I maybe should have just put the board pressure on and then played the Bombardment and the Ajani in the same turn cycle. And yeah, there's the Blood Moon to punish me for not fetching a basic. However, we do still have the colors to play our Ajani and flip it. And my opponent totally tapped out for that Blood Moon, so we can take advantage of that. I do have less creatures on board because I did not get a chance to play my Bowmasters there, but not the end of the world. I also plus my Ajani here, even though it slows down my clock a lot, because I want to play around the common removal in their deck. All their removal does 3 damage. We got to play around it as much as possible. And no hasty Timeless Dragons to kill my Ajani here because of the Blood Moon. Now we get to go zeroing. Unfortunately for me, I can't play any more creatures, so it's going to be a really slow kill. My opponent is able to march the bombardment, which is really good for them. If I didn't have the second bombardment, like that would have really neutered my ability to kill them quickly. But I do have bombardment number 2. I didn't play bombardment number 2 before activating a Johnny because I was thinking I want to put Luris into my hand with my mana. I know I can't cast Luris right now, but if we draw another basic or draw Static Prison or any sort of removal spell for Blood Moon, then we can. My opponent flages, and would you look at that? They can't kill a Johnny right away. And I end up plussing a Johnny again because I know they have escape mana for it. Oh, but I draw my monkey. Yeah, I remember that. I say, yeah, let's dash our monkey first. And we have so much extra bread mana that we can't use on anything else, so I don't mind dashing monkey here. Usually I don't like dashing monkey in the early to mid game. It's really just the late game thing. And my opponent straight up scoops to that. Because that was going to go unchecked. I was just going to keep dashing that monkey. I was going to plus my Johnny to keep him safe. It's going to be tough for my opponent to deal with it. So now they are on the play, and I'm scared because I really think I'm going to lose this because they're a Solitude Fury deck. They even mill a Solitude, meaning they must have removal for this Ragavan, right? They must have more Solitudes. They have to have a Solitude Ephemerate. We're going to get fucked here. Start out, of course, swinging with Ragavan. Of course, not going to get through because they would never put a Solitude into the graveyard if they didn't have Ragavan answer. I'm going to play Amped After, try to get a 2-for-1 here. We hit Juggernaut Peddler. I fucking love Juggernaut Peddler, guys. Love this card so much. We just get to take their Blood Moon, and we get a 2/2 on the board. It's so good. It's exiled forever, the Blood Moon too. It doesn't contribute to their cards in graveyard for Flage. You do not pass go. You do not get $200. I love it. I really love it. Right, and then we draw Nightmare, which is like exceptional here because we get to bring back our Ragavan, and then we threaten to just start looping Peddlers on them. And that is a lights out situation for our opponent. Once we actually start looping the Peddlers and turning all their cards in hand into just Juggernauts, they draw Pithing Needle though. So they prevent the lights out late game situation with Chthonian Nightmare. However, we have a Goblin Bombardment in hand that they now can't Pithing Needle. That Pithing Needle is usually for either Bombardment or Johnny, and they don't get the opportunity to do that. I know that they're just going to march my Ragavan in combat here, so I say, all right, let me play Bombardment first. Make them use the march early, is my thinking. And we don't have anything otherwise, so we're just hoping our current board state is enough. We know that they have blockers in hand, which is a bit scary, but we do have a Lurrus. We can Lurrus bring back Peddler. Hopefully we can draw something like Guide of Souls to help us get some reach. We have Chthonian Nightmare to generate more energy for us. Even if we can't activate it, we can still use it for 3 energy. I see an Amp Raptor on top, best card in my deck. Obviously going to keep it on top. And I believe we end up high rolling with this. I think I hit Static Prison and exile their Obosh, and it makes my opponent mad. Yeah, there's the Static Prison. All right, turn my stuff sideways. We're ending up with a very wide board here. I fetch a basic too, and I just put Lurrus into my hand. So even if we get board wiped here, we could just rebuild with Lurrus plus Nightmare. Good stuff, right? And if you wouldn't know it, my opponent does actually end up drawing the board wipe here. I'm ready to rebuild with Lurrus Nightmare. My opponent knows it because that temporary lockdown is going to hit their own Pithing Needle, so my guy's going to be unlocked. We get to bombard them down to 2, so pretty reasonable to to expect that they would just die there. It is a bit of an early concede, especially when you're in the 6-win bracket of the metagame challenge, but I understand my opponent's a little tilted that their 6-win run with an off-meta deck got trounced by the #1 creature deck in the meta. All right. That's going to be it for me. I'm going to include the gambling degeneracy at the end. I open a bunch of packs. I guess I'll just give my quick thoughts on the metagame challenge as we go. I've been talking to a bunch of people in Discord about this. I might make a separate video just talking about all the different decks that people have 7-0'd with. I made a Discord channel kind of just to track who's getting 7-0s, who's doing what. I know it's very unscientific data, but I asked people, hey, try and post everything, even if it's just an 0-1 scrub. And we got a lot of 7-0s in the chat already, but I think pretty much all of them have been with energy or show and tell. Lots of energy gamers, a lot of people using my exact list. Actually, Riley in Discord had a 7-0 energy list that had 4 Peddlers, 4 Thoughtseize all in the main deck, which is super interesting. All right, actually, let me scroll through the channel right now. Here are 7-0s. Oh, not everybody puts 7-0 in their channel. All right. So we got a 7-0 with Novos S&T. We got me 7-0ing with my deck. Oh, it's going to take me a while to scroll through this. 7-0 with Stock Omnitel. Okay, I can't quite get through all these. There's so many messages in this channel. I think I might make a video where I talk about all the different decks that people got their 7-0s with. But the most popular deck by far that I've seen at least half a dozen people 7-0 with is like Stock Show and Tell. Next to most popular is probably Mardu Energy. Some people using my list, some people using lists that are pretty close. Then there were a couple of 7-0s, I think with Shift and Tell or like some other variants, like the new Woodland variant of Show and Tell got a 7-0 already. I don't know if someone did Jetstorm yet. A lot of people have tried Jetstorm. I think Greaseball got a 6-1 with Jetstorm so far. I don't know if anyone got a blue-black 7-0 yet. Oh, Ali got a 7-0 with someone else posted it, not Ali himself, but Ali took his 7-0 mono blue Belcher build, the one that we played first round, and actually got 7-0 with it, which is awesome. Yeah, lots of Mardu. A 6-1. Oh, a 6-1 with a 4-color energy with Mockingbird in it. It's pretty close. That's pretty cool. Yep, another Mardu one. Another 7-0 with S&T. 5-1 with Belcher. Yeah, lots of cool results. I think I'll make another video where I kind of just talk about all the variety of decks. At least from what I've played against, I've seen so much Frog, so much energy, and so many show and tell variants. The first round is often a little goofy, but after that, it's all timeless decks all the way down. And if you notice in the pack opening, I have a bunch of these old sets set complete. It used to be a limited player when Arena first came out. Just jam limited 24/7. I'm 100% complete on like those Ravnica sets that I opened there. And that's going to be it for the video. Thanks for watching. Ramble at the end about all the 7-0s. I'm going to post those other bits of gameplay that I have with the runs that went all like 3-1, 4-1. I'll go ahead and post those just because that's really valuable too. I'm sure people want to learn from it. And I will maybe make a recap video talking about all sorts of decks that 7-0'd, any sort of surprises in the meta, and my closing thoughts. All right, see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.